unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension.
It is the middle ground between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into
The bite zone.
Thank you. You may not have realized it, but you just have left the CERN. It's going to be crucial to stay calm for what comes next because you have been thrust into a new dimension known as the IT zone. Here you are in 50 after Unix, so in 2020 of our area, in a small country of Western Europe named France, obviously. Did you recognize the Eiffel Tower? You are now a project manager within its Ministry of Education. And the French government has recently committed in modernizing its education system, and your boss has tasked you with leading this reform. Nevertheless, like any self-respecting organization, top-down is never far away. And you have been strongly encouraged to enlist the services of external consulting companies. Before you even get a chance to voice your concern, your boss explained you that these directives come from the big boss himself, slipping in the suggestion to add the McKinney consulting company in the bidding process along the way. So McKinney, you already heard about them, but you don't really know what they do. So you decide to go on their website. So this is a real one running in production. I translate that in English for you. So as you can see here, there's not a lot of information on there, but you can see here on the right the Arc de Triomphe, which is a French sign that means that you're a winner. And there is something really important. As you can see in the IT zone, McKinney is written with a S we don't pronounce because I don't want to be sued by them after the end of that talk. So the aim here is to know how they can help you in the reform of the education sector of the whole country, By scrolling here, you discover that their first proposition value, they say to be accelerator of innovation for their customer in more than 200 areas of expertise. So it means this is a quite big consulting company. But right in the middle, they state to have more than 5,000 technological profiles, which is a bit weird. Why are they phasing just one of their 200 areas of expertise? Does it mean this is more a tech consulting company than the other thing? But never mind. After that, they try to create some empathy with you by introducing you to some of their team members. But don't get them wrong. You're here on the home page, so they are not anybody. You are here, the managing director of McKinney in France, one member of the Global Executive Committee, and the leader of the Transformation Division. And if you click on those people, they have a dedicated page saying how great they are, but unfortunately, it's not really helpful for you. Going back to the main page here, you have their first call to action here, see other profile. So let's discover who are those people. And once again, you will see that they are not anybody. They are directors and senior directors of McKinney, and each of them are leading one business unit, such as the McKinney Cancer Center. Okay, I didn't know they own hospitals and something like that. The digital division, because obviously everyone has one today. But maybe they have someone for education, so let's see that. Doesn't sound well. Okay, let's go back to the main page there. So after that, here, their publication, this is a good thing because this is a demonstration of the know-how. So what do? Fusion, next source of carbon-free energy for Europe. So it seems that they also have physicists. So beware if you are working at CERN, those people are serious. So what do we have then? Economic potential of generative AI, reindustrialization, triple transition in the distribution sector, not a single one, triple one. How complex this is. So this seems to be really clever, but unfortunately, there's nothing related to education. And then you have one section taking the full page that invites you to work for them. Now you are really confused because you are not even the profile for that. So you start wondering to who has been built that website for potential customers like you or for new candidates. And then it ends with the location of their office in Paris. So it's been a good 5 minutes you're on that website, and you still don't know how they can help you. But you remember that when you land into that page, on the top of it, there is a menu here, great user experience, by the way, with one tab named Our Job. So let's discover what their job is. And it seems that their job are 3D rotating balls. So it will only emphasize the fact that they are trying to position themselves on the tech industry, despite it's not your concern at all. So you're really about to give up when you see this nice animation, the arrow there, that invites you to scroll a bit more. Perhaps eventually you will have the information you need. And what do you discover? They have a matrix organization, how helpful this is, with sectoral and functional skill center. Okay, that's not helpful at all. But if you dig a bit more, here you have a page on education with finally the information you were looking for so long, with what they know about education, testimony of their clients, publications, and because they really like that formula, it ends with the people working in that business unit. But you will only find here the top of the consulting crop with the senior partners and the partners. The poor little business analyst won't even get a mention there. So you ended up learning more about McKinney organizations and how they could actually help you. So you live then with a frustrating sense of being unfulfilled. And this feeling doesn't come from nowhere. It's a clear sign that you just uncoated the IT zone. The IT zone is a world where science and belief blend together. This is a realm where you have unseen forces that has a strong influence on where people are building systems. Because you can be tempted here to point fingers at McKinney UX designer for this poor user experience, but in fact, it exists a phenomenon beyond their control that partly drove them to build the website that way. To find an explanation, we need to go back to July 1998. At that time, the New York Times published a front-page story that altered the landscape of the IT zone by showcasing the remarkable achievement of the Dr. Jacob Nielsen. And despite what this picture might imply, he's not the one who invented the mouse. Although it seems quite delighted to be holding one. What a picture, but anyway. So at that time, he was considered as the guru of the web page usability, so he's one of the pioneers of the user experience. And in the late 90s, he set out in a mission to make the web more usable, because he noticed that companies creating their own website had this tendency to over-focus on optimizing one search metric indicator that you know as for indexing. Sorry? SEO. But in fact, this is an older one. The CEO. You heard about it already? No? This is the C-level ego optimization. And this is a real thing, actually. In an article he wrote in 1997, Top 10 Mistakes of Web Management, he said that that was the top 3 mistake, letting the site structure mirror your org chart. Users should not have to care how your company is organized. They should not be able to deduce your organizational structure from the structure of your website. And a classic sign of a mismanaged website is when the homepage has a button for each of the senior vice presidents in the company. Something you definitely did not experience at all in 2024. He's backed up in his observation by another pioneer of the user experience, the Dr. Nigel Bevan. In a paper of 98, he said that organizations often produce websites with a content and structure which mirrors the internal concern of the organization rather than the needs of the user of the website. That's why on the McKinney website, they were pushing a lot about the fact that they're hiring and the fact that they are positioning themselves on the tech industry, despite the fact this is not your concern at all. So since late 90s, we already knew that this is a bad practice. So what keeps people doing that today? So to find, as you dig deeper for answers, you find yourself transported to a new area of the IT zone, jumping ahead to Redmond, near Seattle in the United States, in 38 after Unix, so it's 2018. You are now the marketing directors at Microsoft, and you are working on a strategy to boost the sales of the commercial hit of that time, which is Windows Vista. So suddenly you both burst in your office in a rage because one competitor had just released this ad campaign.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC, here with good news for anyone who's ever been frustrated by Vista.
Oh, you're fixing the problem.
No, I'm making them easier to live with my new line of calming teas. There's Crashy Time Chamomile, just the thing to soothe the nerves after a Vista-related crash. Or if Vista's making your applications run slow, there's Pomegranate Patience. Now, mornings are Raspberry Restart time for
that's
me.
great, PC.
Also afternoons, but...
We should move on.
Yes, let's move on, Mac, to my line of Vista stress-relieving bath salts.
So this is a real ad they made at that time. So it's a complete disaster. Your competitor is openly mocking the small flaws of your operating system. Because indeed, frustrated by the frequent crashes and the hardware compatibility problems, your customer are either choosing to go back to Windows XP, your previous operating system, or even worse, for the first time, they are going to the beaten Apple competitor. And the pressure is so high that you have to let PC manufacturers to sell new machines under Windows XP instead of Vista. But in the midst of this unfortunate situation, two researchers from Microsoft and one from the University of Maryland wonder if they could turn this setback into an opportunity for a study. So they kicked out an analysis of the 50 million lines of code spread across the more than 3,000 binaries of Vista. And the aim of that study was to evaluate how well quality indicators are good in the prediction of software bugs in production. Among those indicators, you had the code churn, code complexity. The dependencies here is the coupling, code coverage, you know, the test coverage, and the number of bugs detected before the release. Since they know which module of Vista had production bugs, they are trying to find out if there is a relationship between the fact that it fails in production and the fact that it has a low code coverage, for example. But before doing that, they added another indicator, the organizational structure, which is totally odd, right? Because this one is not technical at all. So to be a good predictor of software bugs in production, this indicator must have a precision as a recall as close as possible to 100%. I won't explain the difference, but here are the results. And as you can see, the organizational structure had the best score. So in the study of 2008, the researchers have demonstrated that in the case of Vista, the state of the organization was a more reliable indicator of software bugs in production than the code coverage. So to echo Peter Drucker, organization its code quality tools at breakfast. It's not so now that will save you if you are doing some safe agile framework and so on. So in fact here, the initial goals of the researchers was to confirm one statement that was made several decades before in 1975 by the Dr. Frederick Brooks in the book The Mythical Man Month, where he said that product quality is strongly affected by organization structure. By the way, this book is not for the faint-hearted believers in the Gantt chart cult, as it might give them a serious case of heartburn. So, you sense that slight tingle at the back of your neck? This is because you have been taken another leap. You are now... Okay, it was just to make sure you're still awake. This is the sound of the train pulling you into London St. Pancras in 46, after Unix, so in 2016. And now you make your way to the headquarters of the multinational online travel company you're working for as an architect. You have defined the architecture of the train ticket reservation as follows, thinking it was the best solution to meet the business need, which is to offer standardized experience for your users, regardless of the country. Because indeed, your company is selling train tickets all over the world, and each country handles the train differently. Since your company does not want to do custom development, this architecture is broken down into three agnostic components. The first one, Rails supply here, is an aggregator of train carriers API, such as SBB in Switzerland, SNCF in France, Trenitalia in Italy. On top of it, you have Rails shopping that has all the business logic, how you search for trains, select your fare, and so on and so on. And then, on top of it, you have the user interface. So this architecture has been defined 3 years ago. It's so time for you to come down your ivory tower as an architect to see what the developers have done. Because you heard that even though these components are quite new, they are already really hard to maintain in production. So you took a look at the code and, oh my God, what was delivered is exactly what we were trying to avoid. Each component is divided by country using if statement, and some features have been duplicated by country instead of being shared as planned. What went wrong? Is it a matter of insufficient skill and maturity of the development teams? After some investigation, you find out it comes from one belief of the management, which is called the feature team. Who doesn't know what a feature team is? You can, okay. So a feature team is a concept that can work, but so the idea is to boost the autonomy of a team by allowing them to intervene in each layer of the information system to implement a feature. But usually this is an entire project, and once it's done, they will do something else. And here, the management had 3 teams. And because it was too easy, those teams were on different time zones. So they decided to specialize them by country, thinking it would be easier to manage, since the rollout plan in production was to deliver first a French MVP, then one for the UK, and finally one for Germany. However, each team has their own managers, different time zones, different schedule and deadlines, but they were all contributing to the same code base. Since they had little reason to collaborate from a project perspective, this belief and the pressure to deliver led to teams protecting themselves from the other to secure their deadline with that if my case situation. And the worst part of it is that since the ownership of each component is not clear at all, no one wants to bear with the cost of the technical debt. So it seems that the IT zone is trying to send you a message. It looks like that the user experience, the product design, the product and code quality, and the architecture are strongly impacted by your organization. So far, we have seen only symptoms, but what can be the reason of all of those things? To find it, now we will go to 1968. And this is when the Dr. Melvin Conway has published one article titled How Do Committees Invent?, where he explored how organizations design systems. And now we'll do a little exercise that you will be able to reproduce on your own organization, but your manager will get upset. So let's consider this e-commerce platform. It's made up of 4 subcomponents that you can call also subsystems. You have here user management, shopping features, payments, and billing. A system can be anything from a web page to a software product. It can be your phone or even a car. Melvin Conway wonders if there is a relationship between the structure of this system and the structure of the organization in charge of it. So, you notice that whatever the context, you will be able to find for each of these subsystems a team in the organization in charge of its design, building it, maintaining it, and so on. Quite easy to do. To make sure that the whole system works, some of these subsystems need to interface with each other. In computer science, an interface can be data transfer through an API. He pointed out also that if you have 2 subsystems that need to interface, then the related team need to collaborate in order to negotiate a specification of this interface. In large-scale organization, usually that cross-team communication is facilitated by a coordinator that today can be a scrum master or a product owner. So far, so good? Yeah? When you have no link between 2 subsystems, such as between shopping and billing here, there is no requirement for the team to communicate, to collaborate, to negotiate anything. Melvin Conway demonstrated then that there is a close relationship between the structure of the system and the structure of the organization in charge of its design. It's not uncommon for a team to be in charge of several subsystems, and in that case, the structure of the organization becomes a collapsed version of the structure of the system. And sometimes this is the opposite, because you can have several teams on the same subsystem. And this similarity of structure between the system and the organization is what we call an homomorphism. And there is the twist. Because you can think that Melvin Conway didn't invent something groundbreaking by saying that, But there is some properties behind this homomorphism that will be really annoying when you are building softwares or systems. To give you some example, let's say that you are a really beginning of a project. You only have the business need. The system structure is not defined yet, but management has already chosen this organization. As you know, to address the business need, you can have several solutions. And the role of an organization is to determine what will be the best fit by comparing all advantages and disadvantages, drawbacks, of each of these possible solutions. So to simplify the problem here, let's say that there is only 2 possible solutions, and let's assume that the second one is the best one. But we do like we are omniscient for now. Those team on the right don't consider the solution yet. If you compare this solution, what do you see? Here, in the second one, you have one interface between user and billing that doesn't exist there. And there is here a checkout subsystem, which has been spread across shopping and payment in the first option. So now the million-dollar question is, will this predefined organization be able to discover and choose the second design, the best one? So if you take a look at this organization, there is no formal communication between user and billing, and there is no here checkout team as well. So if you apply the homomorphism rule, they would rather choose the first option, which is not the best one. But why? Because user and billing may not realize that by collaborating, they will be able to find a better design for the system by introducing this interface, because they don't have formal communication between them. But the worst part is regarding shopping and payment. They will struggle to realize that the emergence of the checkout system that sits across that sit at the crossroad of their scopes, because this is the management who predefines the scope. It has a strong power on the way they think about the problem. And maybe you know that organizations in the corporate world are not that flexible in their way to communicate. And that's why they will more likely produce a system that looks like their own structure. And the larger the organization is, the more pronounced this tendency becomes. This is why the act of choosing an organization means that you have made design choices. Choosing an organization is like choosing a design for your system. And the act of choosing an organization will narrow down the range of possible solutions by excluding a design that could be better. To give you a concrete example of that, because it can be a bit abstract, Melvin Conway talked about one organization in the 60s made up of 8 people. They were aimed to create a COBOL and an ALGOL compiler. Because they had timing issues, they split and assigned 5 people on the COBOL compiler and 3 on the ALGOL one. As a result, the COBOL compiler ran in 5 phases, while the ALGOL one in 3 only. Despite the fact that this is nearly the same complexity, right? But not everyone agreed with this observation. A new perspective came from Topçu in 1996, who said that if you were to task 5 people in building a COBOL compiler, this compiler will run in 4 phases instead of 5, because someone has to be the manager. This is one aspect of the effect of the homomorphism. We'll see some others. So once again, at the beginning of a project, you don't put a lot of people on the problem to avoid overcrowding, right? But a manager is never far in this matter, and he knows that if they miss the deadline, they will be blamed if they don't employ all the people they have at their disposal. And this will create some kind of pressure on the initial designers, who would prefer to continue tackling the complexity of the problem until they can reduce it to find a solution, rather than fragmenting the knowledge by delegating to others. But since the management deems it's too risky to proceed this way, they will have no choice but to delegate to others, themselves reinforced to secure the deadline as much as possible. According to Conway, this is rooted to the false belief that the work effort is linear. Some people think that the work of 2 people on 4 months is equivalent to the work of 4 people on 2 months. Gantt chart, right? And to make fun of that, Frederick Brooks said that the bearing of a child takes 9 months, no matter how many women are assigned to the task. Okay, it's a pretty old statement, right? We may not say that today, but you have the idea. But let's go back to our organization that has grown a lot. As you know, there is some management guidelines in companies, right? Like double pizza team, 1 manager per team, and so on. And this rule will shape the organization, establishing a hierarchy based on delegation. Because the initial designers, they already have some knowledge, right? So they will take the lead. So this implies that the structure of the organization will be there before defining the structure of the system. And once the organization exists, it gets used. And since you have to make sure that everyone is busy, because you know that lazy developers, right? We split arbitrarily the problem in a way that everyone has a small amount of it. And this implies that some intersection of responsibilities, like this zone in gray here, will go unnoticed. Because by delegating to subgroups, you have created scope that will act as blinders for this group. And it is basically what we call in management silos. So that's why Melvin Conway says there is no such thing as a design group which is both organized and unbiased. Organization will bias the solution. But he also describes something even worse regarding the homomorphism. So the initial designers, they have to step back from the problem analysis to handle knowledge sharing and synchronization. However, the step back weakens their understanding of the problem. And now, if you have 2 people from hierarchically distant teams that need to agree about an interface, the decision-making process becomes more complex. Because if they disagree, what says management guidelines? Yes, we have to go up the delegation chain, involving people which are further from the problem analysis. And if those people disagree, what do? Once again, we go up, and that time we may involve someone even further from the problem analysis, and most of the time this person is not technical at all. And you have to take a decision in 1 hour when people are working on the subject for a month. So it means that the structure of the communication will resemble to the hierarchical structure of the organization, and by homomorphism will be reflected in the systems they build. That's why, according to Conway, military people tend to create systems that looks like the org charts. If you know COBOL is organized like a regiment with division and section, because military people created that language. So this is why the structure of large system tends to disintegrate during development, qualitatively more so than with small system, because usually with small system, you don't have a big organization. Some does, but it's even worse. But anyway. So there is a fundamental concept here, is that when delegation appears, you have the communication disintegrates. What does it mean? This is well illustrated by Frederick Brooks, because he said that when we had 3 people in the team, we only had 3 channels of communication. But when we moved to 11 people, we didn't move to 11 channels of communication. We moved to 55 channels, as in our example. So it means that the communication effort is not linear at all. It also means that the work effort doesn't either. And we have seen that a system built by 3 people will not be shaped the same way than the one built by 11 ones. Melvin Conway adds that 3 well-picked people will create a better design, because all assumptions that might be true when you are peeling potatoes regarding parallelism will go up in smoke when you design systems. And the idea of adding more and more people to speed up the process and secure the deadline will lead your organization toward its bureaucratic form, introducing overhead of communication, synchronization, and unnecessary processes. So that's why it becomes necessary to restrict the communication in order to that people get some work done. This is counterintuitive, but this is true. Who ever complained about having too many ceremonies and meetings here? Everyone. Who didn't, exactly? Managers, maybe. It's a joke. There's some managers here. I like that part. So now you know the effect of the homomorphism regarding of the structure of the organization and the system you build. What can we say about off-the-shelf organization pattern at scale, which is agnostic to what you're supposed to build? Like this one? Who knows this one? This is safe. Yeah, you know that. Okay, so if you don't know it, you're very lucky, but this is a full range of hierarchy with a full graph of communication, with the scrum of scrum of scrum of scrum. Anyway, and okay, so in my opinion, if you apply the homomorphism rule, you may end up with what we call a distributed monolith, but don't tell them, they will get upset. But I didn't state it the law yet. The Conway's law says that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structure of this organization. So that's why when you were on the McKinney website, the first thing you discovered was the org chart starting from the top. And as you delve into the website, the further you went down the layers of the organization. The second thing you discovered was their matrix organization, even before knowing how they can help you. This is a good example, even today, of an organization where their communication structure aligned totally with their hierarchical ones and ended up in the systems they built. Here's their website. Regarding the online travel company, even though an architecture was thought agnostic from the different national trains, the teams ended up by creating a country-divided system because they were themselves organized by countries. And in the case of Windows Vista, you discovered that the state of the quality of the organization has a strong impact on the quality of the software. And this is one effect of the homomorphism. One property on the organization has an effect of the same property on the system. So here the software. But I didn't tell what they put inside organizational structure. So in fact, they checked 8 statements. I only listed 3 of them here. And amongst those, you had a large loss of team members affects knowledge retention and therefore quality. The more contributors to a component belongs to the same team, the higher the quality. And the closer the person with decision-making power over a component is to the engineers who build it, better the quality. And oddly enough, those criteria are at the opposite of the disintegration of communication principle described by Conway. So now you might be wondering, can we avoid the Conway law? No? Yeah? In fact, you won't be able to do that. It will apply anyway. But you can learn how to better manage its effect. Conway explains that the effort of organization, the design effort must be organized according to the need for communication. What does it mean? So first, you have to reduce the complexity of your problem into smaller ones to be able to find subsystem. Then you have to define the need for interfacing of the subsystem to make the whole system work. And once you have that, you can define an organization where the structure of communication will be strictly limited to what is necessary. It will max out area of autonomy for the teams without over effort of communication, synchronization, and so on and so on. But as you know, the first design is never the best one, and business need will also evolve with time. So it means that this organization has to be flexible enough in its communication, its structure, to be able to design effectively in the future. And here, without describing how to proceed for each of the steps, Melvin Conway just defined a new method of organization and system design, which we called later as the inverse Conway maneuver. Who ever heard about that? Yes. So this is a term coined by Jolly Leroy and Mike Simmons in December 2010. And the idea is to break down the silos between teams by reorganizing. But it might not be realistic to do reorganization in every cases. And keep in mind that this is the structure of the communication that will be reflected in the system, not directly the hierarchical one. It will be easier to have an impact on the way people communicate than addressing the sensitive topic of an administrative reorganization, right? And now I will explain you how you can do an inverse Conway maneuver, but we will use another tool for that, the BAPO model. If you never heard about that, it had been theorized by Jan Bosch in 2017. He is a professor of the Chalmers University of Technology and a former vice president of the Nokia Research Center. And the idea of the BAPO model is to say that you must always start from defining how you want to create value for your users and how you want to generate revenues. This is the B here that stands for a business, and this is the starting point of that method. Then, once the business is defined, you can determine the architecture that will make the business happen and all the technical choices. Once it's done, you can think about all the processes required to build that architecture and all the tools. And once you have the B, the A, and the P, it means that you will be able to know what competencies are required to perform all those things. So finally think about the organization. But usually, organizations are not BAPO, they are OPAB instead. It means that they start from an organization and define out of sheer convenience processes. So for example, they have Michael, he's a validator since 10 years. You will end up with a validation process anyway, whatever you do. You don't know the value of that, but never mind, it's there. And this will create an accidental architecture driven from the past of the company rather than its future. And this will limit our ability to do business and innovate. He knows that. He comes from Nokia, remember? Sorry, it was easy. Hope you will never see that talk. And what is really interesting there is that if you go back to Nigel Bevan, in his paper, he gave us 5 steps in order to go over the problem we have seen on the McKinsey website. And all of those steps perfectly align with the BAPO model. But all those people doesn't know each other, right? So here, those steps are meant for a web page, but you might be curious about what we can do when we are building systems or designing a software product. So now we'll go into the details how to proceed this inverse Conway maneuver using the BAPO model. So to start with the B and the A, business and architecture, you have to know that in 2003, a kind of revolution occurred in IT zone with the publication of domain-driven design. So this is a book written by Eric Evans, and the philosophy is to bring back the business in the heart of software development. So it means that we should always start from the analysis of the problem before choosing our language frameworks and fancy tools, and even before going to the implementation and the architecture. So domain-driven design separates 2 spaces, the problem space, that is the business, and the solution space, which is the architecture. Because as engineers, we all have this natural bias of already constructing a solution in our mind even before being fully explained the problem. Always, everyone. You already shows that you will do some REST API, you don't know what you have to do, but anyway, this will be a REST API. It's true, right? So we need to start first from the problem analysis, and you don't need a fancy organization for that. You only need business experts. You put them in a room with cross-functional people, and you make them talk about the business. The aim here is to discover all the business concepts and to map out the business need, in fact. And you can do that through an event storming. Who know what an event storming is? Yes. Okay, some of you. So this is an emergent design workshop invented by Alberto Brandolini. And this is a really powerful and simple workshop. In fact, each attendee will list all the domain events that are important in the problems they are trying to solve. For example, here we have available items from the catalog listed, for example, in this e-commerce platform. Then these domain events will be ordered according to a timeline. This will bring out the value of the flow of business value creation. But what is also nice here is that these domain events will also highlight the business concept, such as catalog, items, cart, price, and so on. And what is really interesting here is that we can analyze their life cycles and the space where they are evolving, because you will see that some of them will be created together, some other will die together, some other will come at a certain point of the timeline. And those spaces will give you your subsystems. In domain-driven design, there is another word for that, which is the bounding context, but it's almost the same thing. So now you are able to start the analysis of the solution space by defining your architecture. We do that with a context map, which is the only tool I know that will help you to deal with the effect of the Conway's law. So the first thing you have to do is to list all the subsystems, and then you have to define the need for interfacing. So here we said that the payment system here need to retrieve some data from the shopping system through a Node.js, which is open source service that you know as API. It's exactly the same thing. It's just an old term that was there before API, but anyway, that's the same thing. I won't explain here ACL, but it stands for anti-corruption layer. This is one strategy of interfacing. If you have seen my talk from yesterday, this is exactly the same thing. But never mind, it's not really important for the rest of the talk here. And then what we will define is the power balance of this system regarding the business. Let's say that they are in a mutually dependent relationship. It means that if one of the systems fail, they will both fail. Because if you're able to put something in your cart, but you're not able to pay, this is a failure, right? And if you can't put something in your cart, but you can pay, this is also a failure. So why are we doing that? Because then we will analyze how the teams in charge of the system are interacting with each other. So let's say, and why? Because we try to find out if there is some kind of orthogonality between the relationship of the teams and the relationship of the system regarding the business, to see if there is we will have some negative effect with the Conway's law. Let's say that here they are in a customer-supplier relationship. It means that the payment team will have to negotiate in order for its needs to be prioritized in the backlog of shopping. And shopping can say, nah, we'll do that later, right? But is it a good idea when you know that if payment fail, they will fail as well? Maybe not. They should rather enter another way to interact, which is here the partnership. That means that they will have to closely define their backlog, the ways they want to deliver value, and so on. I won't explain more about context map, but there is so many things we can say about that. But keep in mind, this is one way to analyze how the Conway's law may apply in your organization and on your system. So this is a good thing, but what we call here the strategic domain-driven design won't give you much guidance about how to organize. It means that it won't tell you if you need several teams on the same system or not, and it won't deal with teams which are, for example, not creating value for end users, like infrastructural teams, ops, and so on. But fortunately for us, in 2019 is released team topologies that deals with the PMEO from Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pais. Who ever heard about that? Some of you? So this is a dynamic pattern of organization in the direct line of the inverse Conway maneuver and complementary to the domain-driven design. I won't explain everything, but I will give you some highlights about it. So regarding the process, what is really interesting, do you know how teams are built today, usually? We put more and more people in a team until it fits the complexity of the problem, the system they are in charge of. And team topology says that we should do the reverse. We should limit the size of the systems to the cognitive load that the team can handle. Otherwise, they will be drawn. Otherwise, they will burn out. And when we say the cognitive load, this is everything: design, building, maintaining it, running it in production. So they need cross-functional people as well. And then it also means that we need to have a clear ownership, one system, one team with enough bandwidth to deal with it. And I said that it was a dynamic pattern. Why? I will give you one example. Here, let's say that we are go back to our e-commerce platform, and let's say that shopping and payment teams discovered that there are some kind of easiness around their interface with duplicated work. Team topology says that they can enter a new way of interaction that is known as the collaboration, which means that they will work really closely together in order to find a solution on the problems they are not used to. But it also means that during this phase, their cognitive load will increase a lot because they still have to deal with their day-to-day work. So it also means that this phase must be as smooth as possible, otherwise they will burn out. Let's say that they will define that this is the better design for the system, so it has to change that way with a new checkout system. In the spirit of team topologies, you have to figure out if this new system will not represent too much cognitive load for shopping and payment in their day-to-day work. If so, it means that you need to pop out a checkout team. And then, because you have the need for interfacing between the system, for example, between checkout and shopping, you will enter another way of interaction between these teams, which is named here X as a service. It means that the shopping team needs to offer a service to checkout in a way that checkout will be autonomous in its consumption. So it can be an API with enough documentation so they can integrate it. But this is also a human service because they have to get their feedbacks, their needs, and so on also. So there is 3 ways of interaction and 4 types of teams in team topology, but I won't go deeper into the matter. If you want to learn more, you can go to teamtopologies.com. As you can see here, Docker is actually using that as an organization pattern. And so now you have learned how to perform an inverse Conway maneuver through the BAPO model with domain-driven design and team topologies to better manage the effect of the Conway's law. If you have any doubt, Accelerate, which is a scientific study published in 2018 on the performance of software delivery, this book tends to support the efficiency of the inverse Conway maneuver. But before you leave, you have to know that changing the organization will not ensure you to have the desired architecture. Because as Matthias Vera said in his article, if your system is rigid to modification, changing the organization will have a limited impact. In other words, changing the organization won't fix a bad design. So you will have to sanitize the system to allow some flexibility even before thinking about reorganizing, right? You have to see the Conway's law at something is constraint that will apply on all the things you do, and the inverse Conway maneuver one mean that will help you to manage its effect, but this is not a silver bullet at all, right? It might fail as well. So keep in mind that work on the communication structure, the way people communicate with each other. If it doesn't work, try the reorganization if you're able to do that. But if you do, don't do that too often, right? If you do that 2 weeks, 2 every week, so every 2 months, people will get mad. This is really costly regarding a human standpoint. And if both things are not working, it means that you have to do trade-off regarding the architecture and then regarding what you can do for the business. So my name is Julien Topçu. I'm a technical coach at Shodo, French consulting company. In my greatest kindness, I brought you back to the CERN. But stay alert and pay attention to your beliefs, or otherwise you risk to find yourself forever stuck in the IT zone. Thank you very much. Ooh. Thank you.